Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rolene Marks. This is the Israel Brief, where we take a look at those top stories making headlines in Israel. We do it every Monday to Thursday, and we do it in partnership with these guys, Lay of the Land. Today is the 11th of September. I'm going to pay tribute a little later in the show to the victims of the September the 11th, 2001 terror attacks. But it is also day 341 since the 7th of October, which of course makes 9/11 today all the more poignant for us here in Israel. And we still have 101 hostages being held in the Hamas terror tunnels. We want them all home now. So let's get into those top stories, and we begin with the horrific footage that was made public last night by IDF Chief Spokesperson Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. Now, this is after showing the Security Cabinet and also speaking to the families of those 6 hostages who were so brutally murdered in captivity. Ori Danino, Hirsch, Goldberg, Polin, Eden Yerushalmi, Alexander Lubanov, Almog Serusi, Carmel Gat. So brutally murdered by Hamas. So what did we see? Well, first of all, the chief spokesperson rappelling down into the tunnel, which is 20 meters underneath a child's bedroom. Now, I mentioned that the other day. I mentioned that the entrance to the tunnel shaft was found in a child's bedroom, and you could actually see the Mickey Mouse, the Snow White, painted on the walls, children's toys around, and then this very steep and narrow shaft going down some 20 meters with at least 4 ladders taking to the part where the hostages were held, which was interconnecting the tunnel shaft to the rest of the tunnels. And what we saw there profoundly shocked and disturbed me. It was very painful to see this. First of all, the space is very narrow. You can't stand upright. I am only 5 foot tall, but looking at that, not even somebody as small as I am would be able to stand upright. There was no light, no ablution, so no bathrooms or showers. What we did see was bottles of urine, the hostages using the empty bottles to relieve themselves. We know from the forensic evidence that they washed themselves with whatever drinking water they had. There were like makeshift beds on the ground. It looked like a little bit of tarpaulin that they would use to rest. A few items of clothing, a notepad or notebook, a chessboard which will be given to the families. And what really disturbed us was the amount of blood on the floor, proof that is where the 6 were executed, not murdered, executed deliberately without trial, really in the most brutal way, with gunshot wounds at very close range to the back of the head. We know that there was very little food, and there was a blast door that sealed the hostages in this particular part of the tunnel. The hostages' families refer to it as the Tunnel of Horrors and appeal that there are still 101 hostages who we need to get home as soon as possible. Time is running out. We've also had some testimony coming in from the family of Eden Yerushalmi, her mother speaking to Hebrew media last night, describing what it was like to have to identify her daughter for the first time. As we know, Eden weighed only 36 kilograms when her body was found, which is proof that Hamas is slowly starving our hostages to death. The pathologist said to her that it's not good. You can see the wounds from where she was shot, and they covered the parts of her head so that her mother was not traumatized, and could see the bit of her face that remained okay. Her sisters speak about being able to identify her by her tiny hands and feet, saying she had such pretty hands and feet. These are the conditions our hostages are being kept in. It is beyond comprehension. I ask you all just to take a minute to think about what I have just spoken about. The footage is available on the IDF website for you to see, but I warn you, it is extremely, extremely disturbing. The chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, urgently issued warrants of arrest yesterday for Yahya Sinwar, as well as our Defense Minister Yoav Gallant and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, this is absolutely preposterous. First of all, drawing a moral equivalence between Hamas, a terrorist organization, and leaders of a democratically elected or a democratic sovereign country. And we can't forget the absolute atrocities that led to Israel's defensive war. Now, the Prime Minister's office released a statement calling it pure anti-Semitism and a moral disgrace of the highest order, and saying that this is purely politically motivated and that there is no professional legal basis. Now, I agree with the Prime Minister's office. Absolutely. First of all, the accusations that, or the charges that have been brought of genocide, crimes against humanity, certainly against the Israeli leaders, have been disproven. In fact, in recent weeks, we had members of the high-level military group, and you can search for their report online, who are military experts, professionals of the highest rank from various countries, various NATO countries, who have been in Israel several times, along with lawyers, have been into Gaza, have seen and understood the situation for themselves, and they have refuted all the claims that the International Criminal Court make. Other issues are things like the laws of complementarity. Israel has a justice system, a Supreme Court that conducts its own investigations. The Military Advocate General is conducting its own investigations into any allegations, which proves that the ICC has no legal jurisdiction in Israel. Israel is also not a signatory to the founding document, which is the Rome Statute. So that removes any jurisdiction that the ICC have over Israel at all. But this is purely politically motivated. We know that in the recent weeks, UK Lawyers for Israel have warned Karim Khan that his refusal to accept evidence from the Israeli side could result in them pressing charges against him with the British government and putting him under investigation. And also, what is highly suspicious is that the day that the ICC announced that they had intentions to issue warrants, they were meant to board a flight to Israel to review evidence, and none of them boarded that flight. So I leave it all up to you for you to make your own decisions. 2 soldiers were killed and 7 others severely wounded when a Yanshuf helicopter, which is the Hebrew word for a Black Hawk helicopter, crashed in Rafah. The helicopter was embarking on a rescue mission and crashed in the Rafah area. We don't know the causes of it yet. We know that it was a part of Unit 669, which is the elite search and rescue forces, and that an investigation is currently underway. Our thoughts, our prayers, and our love are with the 2 soldiers whose lives were taken. And finally, it is the 23rd anniversary of September the 11th. Do you guys remember where you were that day? I remember it as clear as it was yesterday. This year it is particularly poignant as we in Israel are still reeling from the 7th of October, the worst terror attack on our soil since the inception of the modern state of Israel, and the worst attack against the Jewish people since the end of the Holocaust. But today is about the victims as well of September the 11th. And we remember the victims of the Twin Towers. We remember all the victims who were aboard those flights. We remember the victims aboard Flight 93 as it crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. We remember those in the Pentagon who were so mercilessly slaughtered. And we remember the first responders, firefighters, the police, the state troopers, the Port Authority, everybody who ran into those buildings or embarked on rescue missions. Also want to take a moment to pay tribute to those who were at ground zero in the months to follow, trying to recover remains, so many of them suffering from cancer and other health issues as a result of the asbestos, as a result of the attack. And I would just want to take a moment to reflect on them, to honor their memory, and to say, may their memories be eternally blessed. Never again is now, not just for us in Israel, but for our friends and allies around the world. So today we bow our heads in memory of all who were murdered and who perished on September the 11th, 2001. We now get to the audience question portion of our show, and it comes from Hilda in Glasgow. Hilda, I'm dying to get to Scotland. That's on my bucket list of places to visit, and it's such an important question. Hilda from Glasgow asks, is there a difference between news and Hasbara? Hasbara is Israel advocacy, and yes, there is a difference. And it's important to note it because very often journalists are accused of not being pro-Israel. So let's look at it very clearly. Hasbara, or Israel advocacy, is explaining Israel's side of the story and is unabashedly pro-Israel, as it should be. News is something different. News is reporting the reality on the ground. And yes, sometimes the two intersect, but news is reporting what is happening on the ground. Now, I've received through Lay of the Land we'll call it a barrage of complaints from a listener or a viewer who complained that I did not show the counter-protests against the massive protests that we are seeing now almost on a nightly basis across Israel, saying that I am very biased and not pro-Netanyahu. Well, let me explain to you, person who knows exactly who she is, that first of all, the counter-protests were much, 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 much smaller in size. But the massive protests, the biggest that we have seen in well over a year, made headlines across Israel, happened in cities across Israel, and are still carrying on. And the Israel brief is not pro one person in government or anti anybody. What we are reporting are the facts on the ground as we see them, as they make headlines, as they happen across the country, and in fact are reported around the world. Where Hasbara comes in is explaining to the world that Israel is a democracy, and we do have protests on either side, however weighted in size they are. So I hope that is an example that explains the clear difference. And yes, we do have some news channels in Israel that quite unabashedly are pro a certain political figure, and that's their mandate. But here at the Israel Brief, we aim to be as unbiased as we possibly can be and show you the reality on the ground in Israel, warts and all. I hope that explains it. And Hild, if I ever get to Glasgow, a wee dram. And that brings us to the end of today's edition of the Israel Brief. Don't forget to check out our website on www.layoftheland.online. Our Facebook page is at Lottel's site. Our YouTube channel is at the Israel Brief. Like, share, and subscribe. We are on Instagram on my personal page, Rolene_Marks, and on X at Lay of the Land 5. Guys, God bless you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. To our American brothers and sisters and all who lost loved ones on 9/11, our thoughts, our love, and our prayers are with you today. God bless you all. Bye for now.